Hello. A man finds himself trapped in a locked room. He does not know how he ended up in it or who is behind it. Is this someone's prank? Revenge? A social experiment? The unfortunate man only knows one thing. He won't last long without food and water. So he begins his struggle for survival. Not only his intellect and endurance, but his humanity as well will be put to the test. Will he manage to get out and find an explanation for what happened? Day 1. A man wakes up on the concrete floor in a bunker-like room. He complains of a headache after yet another party. Next to him, he sees a swarm of flies feasting on a rat carcass. This scene causes the man to fully wake up. He jumps up and looks around, shocked. There is nothing here but concrete walls and a metal locker. A round steel door is locked. Attempts to open it lead to nothing. The man is convinced that his friends are playing a joke on him and is only worried about being late for work. After pounding on the door in vain, he pulls out his phone and discovers that the cellular network is unavailable. Neither can he open the metal cabinet, which is locked securely. The man looks around for cameras, convinced that his prankster friends are watching him. Then, to spite them, he goes to relieve himself in the corner. The situation gradually becomes more and more alarming, but the hostage does not lose his sense of humor.
You'll catch hell, not me. Ain't that right, Mr. Rat?
Soon, however, his patience runs out. He knocks furiously on the door and demands to be let out, but receives no answer. The second day begins with the man checking around him after waking up to see if anything has changed.
Vault. Locker. Rat. So everybody's still here, huh?
He takes out his phone and makes sure that morning has arrived, after which he accidentally drops the cell phone, breaking it. A sense of hopelessness slowly overwhelms the hostage, and to quench his thirst, he takes desperate measures. He relieves himself in his shoe and drinks the contents.
Refreshing.
In a fit of rage, he strikes the lamp. It begins to swing, and the man's attention is drawn to the little key inside it. He breaks the lamp and retrieves the key, reasoning that what is happening may be some kind of experiment. The man unlocks the lock on the locker. Inside, he finds several tools and 2 gas cylinders. Rejoicing at his find, the hero takes a hammer and a chisel and tries to break through the steel door. This doesn't work. After this, the man begins to experiment with the cylinders. He manages to connect them to the cutter and extract fire. The hero directs the flames at the fire detector, hoping that it will react and he will have drinking water. But the attempt fails because the sensor is clearly malfunctioning. Then the man tries to burn through the steel door, but the flames do not do much damage. This infuriates the captive. He smashes up the room and drops the metal locker on the floor, but quickly decides to pull himself together so as not to waste energy. The man tries to analyze the situation and concludes that he is not crazy, not dead, and definitely not asleep. This means that he cannot give up on trying to get out. A small hole in the wall, which was hidden behind the locker, catches his eye. He takes up the chisel and hammer with renewed vigor and tries to widen the hole. This he manages to do with difficulty, but the man remains optimistic even after a small piece flies off the wall and into his eye.
It's okay, I got another one.
He spends all day at work and soon realizes that he needs fresh air. An oxygen tank catches his eye. The idea of inhaling the gas seems great to the man, and he reaches for the cylinder and then passes out for a while. Upon coming to his senses, the man realizes that he needs food in order to replenish his energy. He looks at the insect-ridden rat, collects maggots from it, and eats them. Such a meal does not bring him pleasure, but the guy notes that it could have been worse. Still convinced that someone is watching him like a lab rat, he quenches his thirst in the now familiar way, and then takes up the chisel and hammer again. With some difficulty, he manages to widen the hole, but after a while bumps into a rebar inside the wall. He takes up the torch, and as if possessed, uses it to get rid of the obstacle. He anticipates his imminent release and swears that he will take revenge on those who locked him in this bunker, then falls asleep exhausted on the locker. After waking up, the hostage continues to work his way to salvation again. He is covered in sweat, dirty, and tired, but does not allow himself to rest. And soon, he finally gets lucky. The man digs a through hole in the wall and crawls through it. But the hero's joy is quickly replaced with a shock. It is not freedom that awaits him behind the wall, but the exact same cell with a steel door. As the lock does not give in to his attempts to open it again, the man roars in despair. Suddenly, under the eerie flicker of the lamps, he spots a coffin. Anxious, he arms himself with a chisel as if it were an aspen stake and opens the coffin. Inside lies a young girl in an ethnic costume. The man is sure that one of the perpetrators hid the body here on purpose, but suddenly, the girl wakes up and, frightened by the stranger, starts screaming. In a panic, she begins shouting in a foreign language that our protagonist doesn't speak. The man tries to show that he means her no harm, but his appearance seems threatening to the girl, and she crawls through the opening into the first room to escape. The man decides to leave her alone so she can calm down. However, he himself suffers a brief breakdown and starts laughing hysterically, although he quickly runs out of steam. In the other room, the girl picks up the rat in disgust and throws it through the hole to her neighbor.
So I get the coffin and the rat. Nice.
A man settles in for the night in a coffin. Meanwhile, his friend in misfortune is crammed into a corner with a look of despair on her face. The third day begins with the girl taking the protagonist's tools and waking him up speaking her language. They don't understand each other, but the hero figures out that the girl wants him to try to make another hole in the other wall. The man is dehydrated and seems to be in bad shape, but he doesn't lose heart. He picks up his tools again, except that because of bloody blisters, he can no longer grip the chisel properly. So he asks his partner to do it for him. As he swings the hammer, the girl gets frightened that he might miss and takes her hands away. The man offers to switch roles, but his partner's weak strikes do no damage to the wall and they simply waste time. The man sarcastically observes that if something needs to be done well, you have to do it yourself. So he starts hammering the wall himself while the girl sits resentfully in the corner. After a while, his friend replaces him. During a break, he tries to remember what happened to him before he ended up in the vault. Who could have taken such cruel revenge on him, and why? He even begins to think that he was caught up in a sophisticated alien experiment. The girl is clearly annoyed by the hero's pondering. She rudely hands him the tools and crawls into the first room. There, she settles into a corner and is about to relieve herself. The man, having realized this, crawls in after her and tosses the girl his shoe. The girl mistakes him for a pervert and arms herself with a shard of lamp, but the hero manages to gesture that he is simply insanely thirsty. Reluctantly, the girl agrees to do as he asks. She hands the man the full shoe and watches in disgust as he drinks. Having quenched his thirst, the protagonist hands the shoe to the woman. It doesn't take long to persuade her to drink its contents, for she herself suffers from dehydration. Now they have to solve the issue of hunger. The man finds the rat again and collects maggots from it for breakfast. He remains optimistic and assures the girl that it tastes just as good as chicken.
Eat, you're so thin.
But she still refuses to eat the maggots. The man, on the other hand, has clearly developed an appetite and begins to lick greedily, looking at the rat's body. At the last moment, the girl stops him from eating the corpse, and they return to the room with the coffin. While the man is swinging the tools, his partner is brooding in her language about how she should be at a wedding right now, and how she doesn't understand what sin she's been put in this creepy place for. The man notices the girl's tears and wants to cheer her up somehow, so he starts singing. His ridiculous antics make the girl smile, and she begins to sing along in her language. The upbeat rhythm makes the work go better, but suddenly the man misses and hits himself on the finger with a hammer. The girl tears off her head covering and bandages the wound. The man is frustrated to realize that he is getting weaker and will soon have to roast the rat to replenish his strength. Both partners look miserable, but they do not lose hope of salvation. Together, they try to break through the wall, and then something unexpected happens. After yet another strike, they hear that the lock on the door has made a single turn. They immediately rush to the door and pound on it, but it is still locked, and nobody reacts to their cries for help. The hostages decide that the kidnappers are just teasing them, so they return to their previous activity. But just as they start punching a hole in the wall again, the lock on the door takes another turn. The man figures out the kidnappers' plan to drive them out of their minds and rob them of their last strength, so he remains where he is. But the girl runs up to the door again and bangs on it. The man shouts threats into the void and convinces the girl to ignore the kidnappers' provocations. They continue to break through the wall, no longer paying attention to the constant turns of the lock. Soon, the man has a plan. He suggests to his new acquaintance that they move towards the door without looking at it. Surprisingly, it works. As they walk, they reach the door, which suddenly opens. This brings the hostages to a new room, inside which they see an empty grave and a red tombstone. Everything that is happening reminds the man of the TV series The X-Files. He is now convinced that aliens are experimenting on them. The situation seems completely hopeless, because it becomes obvious that the grave was dug out for the vault's prisoners.
It's okay. It's for us.
But the partners decide to continue the struggle for freedom. This time, they're going to make a tunnel under the door by digging from the grave. The work goes on much slower because the man is completely exhausted. Then, the girl suggests doing the same trick without looking at the door. But this time, it doesn't work. The lock remains unmoved. The prisoners have no choice but to keep digging. But soon, the man collapses from exhaustion and can no longer work. Hopeless, he admits that they won't last long without food. All of a sudden, a predatory grin appears on his face. With hungry eyes, he looks at the frightened girl and asks the invisible kidnappers what they want from him. Do they want him to eat his friend in misfortune for the sake of survival? The woman is shaking with fear, but the man yells out sharply that he will never do that. The girl exhales in relief, while the man weeps in helplessness and falls asleep. His partner barely manages to pull him out of the grave and hysterically wonders why the Lord Almighty is punishing her. These questions remain unanswered, and the girl understands that she must not waste the precious liquid for nothing, and so she moistens the man's parched lips with her tears. He wakes up and sees the woman tenderly pressing his palm to her face. She guides his palm to her breast and clearly hints at intimacy. The man says with a sad smile that he doesn't have the strength to do it, but this doesn't stop the girl. She helps him undress and throws off her clothes. After the intimacy, they fall asleep in each other's arms. The man wakes up first and looks at the girl fondly. He doesn't know her name or understand her language, but he feels an affinity for her. He carefully covers his sleeping friend with a cloth and lies down next to her, but he doesn't have the chance to fall asleep as he hears that the lock on the door has begun to turn. The man anxiously wakes the girl up and asks her not to look at the door. Backing and leaning on each other, they reach the exit. The door opens, and immediately the singing of birds can be heard. The pair excitedly turn around and stare in wonder at the view that opens to them. Behind the steel door is a fantastic place with virgin forests, waterfalls, and mountains, and an unfamiliar planet in the sky.
I wasn't expecting that.
The man and the woman, taking each other's hands, walk smilingly into this paradise, leaving behind an open steel door. As always, you'll find the name of the movie in the video description. In the meantime, let us know in the comments, what do you think really happened to the characters? And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next awesome retelling.